is Tudor Ted Gillescu with my first ever tutorial. I created this tutorial after watching the Advanced 2.5D Animation After Effects, a tutorial by Matthew Fuller, posted on the CreativeCow.net website. I am using for a while now some of the same techniques that Matthew is showcasing in his tutorial to extract depth from 2D still images and create 2.5D moving graphics inside of After Effects. And I ran into the same problem with camera moves as he did. Pretty much you cannot move the camera too much around. You can travel in or travel out of the image. If you start rotating the camera and moving it left to right too much, then you will notice that you only have a bunch of 2D planes floating in 3D space, and that will shatter the illusion you're trying to create. I wanted to see if I can actually come up with a technique that will allow me to move the camera, rotating a bit, and just making a more interesting camera move. And I picked up the same image he's using in his tutorial from publicdomainpictures.net. The surfer smashes the curl, and I started to play with that. This is how the image actually looks like. I wanted to give myself sort of a short brief. Wanting to create some titles for an imaginary show called Surf Extreme, and I wanted the camera to capture just a fast movement of the wave coming over the surfer a bit in the beginning, and then sort of continue to move around in bullet time, revealing drops in the air, and you can see the splash that's coming towards the camera, nice movement in front of the camera, and then get some volumetric splashes back here. So I needed to create that somehow together with the text to give this impression of three-dimensional space without revealing that there's just a bunch of pieces from a 2D image. So I used freeform and displacement maps and a few other tricks, which I will explain in a few minutes here. But here is the final animation, and then you can see you can actually feel the three-dimensional water splashes. You can, if you pay attention to the surfer, you will notice that he's got some volume, and of course using particular, I created these water drops that are floating in the air, and the camera moves through them. And all in all, I think this is a pretty cool shot, and I will show you how I've done this in this tutorial. Alright, so I'm going to create a new composition the size of the original image, which is 1280 by 960, and I'm going to make the length of this composition 4 seconds, the frame rate 25 frames per second. And I'm going to bring in the layers of this image that I've created in Photoshop. I'm just not going to open up Photoshop because there's nothing I can show you there that I won't be able to show you in here about this image. Basically, I cleaned up the surfer from the water and created a clean water layer. Then I cut a mask around the surfer and created a layer with just the surfer. Using the shape of the surfer, I created a displacement map, basically a black and white image where I used the burn tool to kind of give depth to the shape of the surfer. And then also from the clean water plate, I just pulled only the splashes, pretty much selecting the white and then crushing down the black all the way till I got this shape of the splash from the image. So these are the 4 layers I created in Photoshop. I'm just going to copy them and paste them in my new composition so I can start from scratch in this tutorial. And what I'm going to do is, using the same technique that Matthew recommends, is pull out one splash from this image to use in front, which is this part down here. So what I'm going to do for that is just duplicate the layer, create a mask around the area of the splash that I wanted to use, not touching the edges. Like that. Just pretty rough, nothing fancy. I'm going to reveal the mask feather properties of the layer, feather the mask out, apply some color correction here, bring down the hue, actually the saturation, using the hue saturation filter, and then I'm going to apply levels to have nice blacks in this image, not crushing down the grayscale but keeping the information, just making sure this in this area this is pretty black, so that I can use this both as a matte and as a displacement map for a freeform. Now once that is done, I will pre-compose this layer and call it the water splash map. Water splash map. Move all attributes into new composition. Duplicate that. Duplicate the layer. I'm going to hide these two. Use the first one for Lumimat. Pre-compose these two so I can apply freeform to the pre-composed layer. Call this water splash 01. Okay, and then apply freeform to the water splash. Go to displacement control and use the water splash map Luma. I'm going to set displacement height to 70. The 3D mesh quality, I'm going to lift the mesh subdivision to 30 and then high for the anti-aliasing. And then I'm going to use the 3D mesh controls to change the position of this a bit. So I'm going to rotate this on the y-axis with 10 degrees. Now, just as Matthew suggested, I'm going to duplicate this layer and reuse it. I'm just going to change some of the settings for the displacement controls. I'm going to use 90 for the displacement height and then 20 for the mesh subdivision. Then I will position this a little bit different. I'm going to give it a rotation of -8 on the x-axis, of 30 on the y-axis, and -1 on the z-axis. And now if I just turn around the clean water layer, make it 3D, create a camera, just use a preset 20mm, then we'll be able to see what I am creating here. I'm just going to find a nice angle so we can look at this from a good angle. There we go. And then turn the checkerboard background off. You can see that I do have some nice three-dimensional displacement of the splash layers. And as I move around, if I get close to them, I'm going to be able to get a nice feeling for these waves of the splashes being in 3D space. Now, to differentiate the two, I'm also going to apply on a blur. There we go, a 3-point blur to the water splash on top, just to get a little bit of a different texture to it, and not have the same exact look as the layer underneath. Now I'm going to reset the camera so I can look at the image straight on, and I'm going to duplicate again this clean water layer, turn the 3D properties off from this layer because I want to displace this again using the all water map that I created. I'm going to duplicate this all water map layer, use one for a track matte, using the Luma values for the water splash, and there it is. I just got the water splashes, all the water splashes from the image here, and I'm going to pre-compose this. There we go, pre-compose, and call this water splash all. And then apply freeform to this as well, using the all water map as a displacement layer, using a height of 30, not any more than that, a subdivision for the mesh of 20, and a high anti-aliasing. And I want to animate this over time. I'm going to animate this between 0 and 2 seconds, because in the end, once all the pieces are together, I will do a time remapping of the whole clip, and I will take the first 2 seconds and crunch them down to 15 frames, because I want that fast movement in the beginning and then the slow movement for the frozen bullet time type of look in the end. So all my events, all my animated events need to have between 0 and 2 seconds. So I'm going to set some keyframes for just the Z position here. And I'm going to set this at 90. Over here, and I go to 2 seconds. I'm going to set it here at 14.8, and this is the animation I'm going to apply to this splash, all splash layer. Now, one more thing I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate the clean water layer, because I need something interesting to happen in the background as well, not just in the front. I'm going to cut a rough mask around the shape of the wave. Really rough, nothing fancy. And I'm going to feather that out to about 100. And then with the layer that I have in the back, I'm going to position that at 108 on the Z-axis. I'm going to bring it a little higher as well, 556, actually lower on the Y, and then rotate on the X-axis -6 degrees. And since I set these keyframes here, let me set them at the beginning as well, because this is where I want this to be at the very beginning. And then at 2 seconds, I'm going to bring this to -4, the rotation on the X-axis. And then 486, the position on the Y. And this will give me some nice movement in the back there. Basically, everything works together to give the impression of the wave moving, coming over. One more thing I will show you how I did. I'm not going to do it now, I'll show you later. I use a distortion mesh, mesh warp, actually, to create some movement in this area of the water coming up, which will give the impression that the whole thing is moving towards the camera. One other thing I need to set up here is the surfer. I have already the 2 layers I'm going to use. Bring them down underneath the water splash. Turn on the layer with the image of the surfer, and I'm going to pre-compose that, because otherwise freeform will not work on it. Move all attributes to new composition, and then apply freeform to it. And I'm going to use the displacement controls, choose the surfer map, displace him out to 40, mesh quality to 30, and anti-aliasing to high. And then I will animate him a bit as well. His position, I'm going to bring him on the z-axis to about 50. Shrink him, actually put him a little back in z-space. And then I will bring him up with -10 on the y, and rotate on the y-axis with -3 degrees, and on the z-axis with -5 degrees. And set keyframes here too. Go to 2 seconds. Bring him back to 0 on the y, 0 on the rotation on the y, and 0 on the rotation on the z-axis. And that's pretty much all my animation in here. If I take my camera and rotate it, you will notice a few interesting things. I do have some volume now to a splash here, some volume to the splash behind, and a little bit of roundness to the shape of the surfer himself. Now, of course, everything can be done a lot better if you spend more time. I just did this really quick to see if how it will work out, and I think the result is pretty good. So I just decided to present this to you without spending a lot more time trying to come up with better height maps. But I will mention that, of course, there's always the possibility to do a better job, and I'm sure some of you will if you apply these techniques to some of your images. Now, I'm not going to use this project anymore. I'm going to go to the project I already did before to show you some of the other things I've applied to make this more interesting. Of course, this project is a 1280 by 720, 916 by 9 aspect ratio. I created a layer with particles using particular. I've made some just simple particles to simulate water drops floating in the air, match the position, and then that's pretty much all I've done to it. I've also brought in an adjustment layer in which I applied a blur, and I animated that blur. Here it is. I have some keyframes set up. I have about an 8-point blur in the beginning when the angle is more extreme, and you get, if you want depth of field, you will have the things that are closer to the camera blurred, and then those who are far away blurred as well. Now there is a camera depth of field also that is applied to the mid layer, the wave, and the background, so that's a natural blur happening there from the depth of field of the camera. But then I also added this for the splashes on this adjustment layer, because these not being real 3D layers, the 3D properties of these layers come from freeform. They will not be affected by the camera's depth of field being turned on. So I've kind of faked those in there. Also, for this look, I've applied Colorista. Here I'll turn this off so you can see the difference. With the first layer of Colorista, I just changed the colors, made the blues and the greens more vivid in this image. You can see the original, and now with the color correction applied, and then I created a mask and a power mask, and then darkened the outside so that I'll have my point of interest on the surfer and the text that will come in here. I brought in the text, animating it also in the first 2 seconds, so they'll come one after the other, and it'll look like it comes really fast once I apply the time remapping. And then pre-composed everything, applied another adjustment layer with some grain, using a preset from the Add Grain filter, the Eastman Color High Speed Negative 400T, and I have also used CC light rays to create a flash where the time change happens in my time remap. I've created a keyframe at 2 seconds and brought it down to 15 frames just to kind of make everything that happens in the beginning really fast, and then the rest of it moves slow. And here is again the final result of all of this. Now I'm sure you can do a lot more with it if you want to get into more detail, play around with the splash, create more layers for the splash, different parts of the splash you can displace and bring it forward, and the more you do it, the more you play with it, it'll have more of a three-dimensional feel. You can use maybe better displacement maps to create better three-dimensional displacement, but I think this works for me right now. It's a nice shot and a cool looking title. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This is again my first ever tutorial. I am tutor Ted Gillescu signing off.